Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to the channel, and as is expected, as I announced earlier, I got the tie back on, and we got some Top Hollow music going on in the background, which means we got some more Pokemon Sleep news. Now, what is it? Now, those of you that don't know, this may not be necessarily news, because it's not news that's posted in the, in the actual game. This is more fan-made news because it is actually collecting the information about the new Pokemon that they've released, the Weavile and Sneasel. Now, tonight I had a very wild ride of emotions, and I'll get to that kind of, but my gosh, all I've got to say is wow. This is like the definition of power creep in just about every way imaginable. However, it's reasonable power creep, and I will get to that. But yes, first, why do I say that? Well, when they were first showing, I was seeing the first screenshots for Sneasel, we had like about an hour maybe 30 minutes to an hour in there where we had some screenshots of what Sneasel looked like, what its frequency was looking like, what it did, all of its stuff. And we were looking at it, and the immediate thought process, so this is an infographic made by the Ranax team, this is what we were looking at for the Sneasel before we even knew anything about the Weavile. 3200 base frequency. Now, that doesn't really mean much stuff if you don't know about the numbers of this game, but the previous Darkberry specialist, the Houndoom, keep in mind this is a pre-evolution, Houndoom's base frequency is 55 minutes, which, when you do the math, that comes to 4,300 seconds. Or, no, 3,300 seconds. Sorry, I said that wrong. 3,300 seconds compared to the Sneasel doing 3,200 seconds. The Sneasel's the pre-evolution, and it had a base frequency that was faster, because lower numbers, this is the time between helps. So, lower numbers are better in this case. The Sneasel, as the pre-evolution, was faster than the Houndoom. So we already knew this was going to be a power creep before we even got to the Weavile, because even if the Weavile somehow turned out to be worse than the Houndoom, people could just run Sneasel with, like, even without a ribbon. They could just ribbon it, and then it gets even faster, because it was a pre-evolution. So, it was just insane to see that, and I was like, oh my gosh, what are we dealing with here? So, yeah, Sneasel is quite cracked. It is better than the Houndoom on that base frequency and base frequency alone. However, there are other factors that go into it. And what are that? Well, I'll get into ingredients in a minute here. Ingredients are an interesting thing to discuss. But, skill. Tasty Chance S. One of the most bizarre skills in the game. There's a lot of math behind it to really figure out how much Tasty Chance S is really contributing, but the gist of it, I like the idea, and if you guys ever follow Bropenings is his channel, I always include a link to his channel in the description of my videos, because I think the dude makes some pretty great Pokemon Sleep related content. I sometimes disagree with a few of his takes, but I still think overall it's very, very good content. He just released a fantastic video talking about Dedena's main skill, and the implications of Tasty Chance S, and all the math behind it. I was very impressed with it. And basically, if you watch that video and know any of the math behind Tasty Chance S, you know that less procs, yes, it's less procs, but the less procs you have, the more value you get out of the procs you have. So, and I've also talked about this before in my the concept of enough video in my I touched on it less, but in my series on sleep mechanics and sleep discussions, I talked about how when it comes to Tasty Chance S, the more procs per day you get, the less value you get out of every additional proc, because the math behind it, just the way the skill works, a single proc that is left to give you that skill until until you get a crit, it doesn't actually reset. You're technically getting more value out of the skill. So, very complicated skill in how it works, but basically, because of that, it works really well on berry specialists and ingredient specialists, because even though it's not going to be proccing as often, the value you get out of those procs is way more valuable than when a skill specialist is proccing it a ton. There are interesting things you can do with the skill specialist proccing it a ton, like Monday morning meal prep, making a big meal and ranking on a big pot. But even if you don't do that, if you're just using it to generally increase your meal strength, it's a really powerful skill, arguably the best one in the game to be put on a berry specialist. Even though you're not really focusing on cooking with an ingredients berry specialist, which is how I think that's kind of balanced out. But Sneasel, good skill, not necessarily immediately better than the Charge Strength M on the Houndoom. It is if you use it right and you're really maximizing the potential out of it, but if you're throwing a berry specialist on the team and not really thinking about it, then you're not really maximizing the potential of the skill. So I think the Houndoom does still have the better skill. And we don't know Weavile or Sneasel's ingredient or skill trigger rates yet. So that's still up for debate. Or not debate, but to find out. But, yeah. It's interesting that it's got a better skill in general, more flexible skill. It's phenomenally better at producing the berries, because we eventually found the Weavile, which I'll get to this little guy in a moment here. And yeah, it just is power creep on the poor Houndoom. And then I was like, well, if it's a power creep on the Houndoom, what is it going to be a power creep on else? Is it going to overcome the wall rain for Snowdrop? And based off preliminary estimates, now, take this data here at a very high grain of salt. These are unsettled ingredient rates, unsettled tasty chance, like skill trigger rates. Those numbers could vary wildly, and they typically do, because I'm literally making this video less than an hour after they're posting the stats for Weavile, after the first person reported to Rain on X. So these stats, tremendously different. These numbers could be wildly different based off skill and ingredient rates just in the next 2 hours even after I record this video. But this is really just looking at a rough estimate, and it looks like, yeah, it's perhaps the case that Weavile is going to be the better berry specialist at Snowdrop Tundra, even than Wall Rain. And one interesting thing here is that the calculator does include the value of ingredient magnet S here. Because it can calculate the average value of each ingredient and then come up with a value of the total ingredients produced by the skill. It doesn't really have a good way of doing that for Extra Tasty Chance S, so having Tasty Chance S just comes up as no value in the calculator. So this comparison here, if anything, it is in favor of these two because it's actually accounting for their skills. The skill, which is arguably one of the most valuable parts about Weavile, is being left out of this calculation. So just absolutely wild. I guess I didn't throw up here Vigoroth, but Vigoroth is worse than both of these, I believe. Maybe better than the Houndoom if it's got a ribbon. Actually, it might be better than both. Let's see. I'll bring it on because why not? Vigoroth. I'm comparing these all at level 50 just because that's kind of, I feel like where most Pokemon are currently in the meta. And then I put Berry Finding S on it. Okay, so Vigoroth, yeah, doesn't beat him out, even with the ribbon. So yeah, it's just crazy to look at this though, because wow, what a power creep in just about every sense of what power creep is. Now, I wanted to make a more interesting prediction, or like about its role in the meta, and I'm noticing now. I'll zoom out just a little bit so you can see a little better. Okay, so this is my spreadsheet that I like to do a lot of math in. A while back, I made this little infographic, actually. It was up in the Discord for a while. I don't know if it's still there or not. Like the Pokemon Sleep Discord. I was inspired by this user. I wrote it in... I credited the person in the posting, but very heavily inspired from that person because I pretty much just copied their thing and just updated it to more recent information. For recent information at the time. At the time that I made this, I was accounting for level 55 strength per help, level 55 seconds per help, strength per second, and then comparing that to the maximum value of any of the current berry specialists in the game. Now, I liked the way this was laid out, so I copied it over and just updated it with modern numbers. They had it for just like level 50, and they were missing a few Pokemon, so I added them in and edited that for them. Well, Um, this was what I had for back when level 55 was out, and I hadn't adjusted for two things. One was ribbons, and two is new Pokemon, which is just Weavile. So I readjusted this. And okay, this is an imperfect estimate because it doesn't take into account ingredients or ingredient rate or anything. It's just getting an idea of if you're to have a generalist berry specialist, who is going to be best at doing that. And my initial calculations came out to show Raichu's the best. Now, after you take into account ingredient specialists or ingredient rates, and things like that, then really it's kind of a toss-up between any of these top 5. One can make the argument for Steelix. The Johto starters all have really good islands, so really any of these top 5 are probably your best generalist berry specialist. And one could make the case for, I'd say, any of them above like 90% on this last threshold for being a decent generalist berry specialist with the right sub-skills in nature. And what I mean by a generalist berry specialist, I mean as one that is phenomenal at the island in which they have favored berry at, but then also can do well at every other island in the game. Almost kind of like the generalist charge strength M or S skills specialist. If you have a berry specialist that's that powerful, it can just go anywhere, just like those charge strength M. But unlike the charge strength skill specialist, they excel at their given island, like extremely well. I used this to predict which Pokemon do best at that, and I came up with like these, basically these 5 to 7, roughly. Well, where does Weavile fit into this chart? If I'm to predict a generalist berry specialist, oh my gosh, it is the new top. It is the new baseline for a generalist berry specialist. And this isn't even data that's disputed, because all the disputed data that goes into like the nitty-gritty production comparison comes from skill trigger rate and ingredient rate playing into that as well. But this this is just the berry production if you're to let it sneaky snack, really, is what we're looking at. Sneaky snacking at minimum energy. That's what this chart calculates. And yeah, in that exact circumstance, Weavile is the new standard, the new best berry specialist in the game. Beating out Raichu pretty significant, or not by too much, but decently well, because it is, yeah, it's slower, but it's significantly stronger in what berry it produces. Dark Berry is much stronger than Electric Berry, so having middling speed brings it up to actually be the new standard for berry specialists in the game, which is wild. Now, overall though, my thoughts on the Weavile, should you be hunting it? Because yes, it is good. Overall, I'm still not going to be hunting it, because, well, even though it can do this, yes, I already have the Raichus on my team, so you gotta consider still, yeah, new stuff is cool, new stuff is new and flashy, and this is power creep, but it is balanced by scarcity and expense. If you look at the Weavile, or if you look at the Sneasel, oops, I did the wrong thing there. If you look at the Sneasel, 16 pips of investment. And then, as far as rarity goes, 6.004 million drowsy power requirement for the base spawn, the 1-star style. That's about as rare as a Ninetales. If I was to pull up Ninetales, that's the same base for an evolved Ninetales. Not a very common spawn. It's at one of the worst islands, and it's an island that really only benefits for itself. So, the things that you catch at Snowdrop are good at Snowdrop. You got Walrein and Weavile are like the 2 best things there. If you need eggs, Delibird and the Abomasnow are also there. So that's really all you're looking for at Snowdrop is the egg farmer. So you really don't necessarily need Dark-type Berry. And there are, like I said, plenty of other reasonable, like I said, anything above like 90% is a reasonable berry generalist if you can manage to catch one with that berry finding S help bonus combo. that's just phenomenal. So, and then the final thing, yeah, it's a 16 pip investment. You're not going to be catching 30 of these to catch the perfect Sneasel. I'd be shocked to see anybody catch that many Sneasel, let alone even encounter that many Sneasel anytime soon. So, yes, it's better. Yes, it's cool. If you can manage to catch a good one, then you just won yourself the lottery. If anyone catches one with Berry Finding S, Help Bonus, Help Speed M, or like a Speed Up Nature, anything even close to that, you are one of the luckiest people alive in this game. But I don't recommend to anyone to hunt the Sneasel, because as I've already stated in both the community post and in my last daily journal video, it's just too much of a cost. Well, what's the sunk cost you spent in time hunting this guy? You spend so many weeks at Snowdrop, and you get one really good berry specialist if you get lucky enough. Meanwhile, in the same time, you probably could have caught 10 Pichu if you go to Old Gold Power Plant or even Greengrass and had 10 more shots at getting the right Raichu, which, if we go back to this comparison, I do want to make the comparison. All of these guys can be caught at 5 pips. I think it's reasonable to assume that with a 5 pip investment, you would maybe be able to encounter one that has Help Speed M in addition to Berry Finding S as a reasonable estimate in the same amount of time that you could catch one Berry Finding S Weavile. And if you just give all of these just Helping Speed M, look at that, they all beat out the Weavile suddenly. And because they're easier to catch, you're actually more likely to reasonably catch this versus these same stats on the Weavile, because the Weavile you're not catching as many of them. So if you get lucky with it, it's a gambler's Pokemon or a rich man's Pokemon. If you're a whale, have Ultra Biscuits to spend, you know what, go for it. But for most players, it's just like it's a pipe dream to imagine catching something like this. But it is power creep. But it's power creep done in a way that it's manageable, because it's going to be a very long-term hunt for a lot of players. So, now I do also want to touch a little bit on its ingredient production. Now, one thing that I like, I almost think that the Tasty Chance S is a little bit of an homage to, I think I saw a GIF with Sneasel with a chef's hat, and I know that image has become the the logo of the Sleep API devs. Sleep API is it's a fan-made website here I've never shown this one off because I don't really use this tool all that much, but I do like what they're doing with it. As you can see, it's Sneasel with a chef hat. They do some very interesting things here with meal prep is primarily what you're looking at. Cooking tier list, team finder, production simulator. So Sleep API, their logo is a Sneasel with a chef hat, and there's almost a part of me that wonders, okay, maybe they pulled that image from the anime or something, but it almost feels like them putting Tasty Chance S on here is an homage to the fact that there's this fan-made website, because this has been the case for a while now. So yeah, it's got Tasty Chance S, but its ingredients: sausage, egg, soybean. Now, what can we do with that? Because when you're looking at a generalist berry specialist, one of the things that I love about the Raichu is it's got apple and ginger. Apple and ginger is one of the most synergistic combos in the game for ingredients, being included in specifically for desserts. The Zing Zap Spice Cola, one of the best meals in the game. Tea Time Corn Scones. And then if we go a little bit lower on the totem pole, the Norloy's Restorative Tea. And if you really need a backup to your backup to your backup to your backup, there, way down here, there is Ember Ginger Tea as like a last-ditch effort, if nothing else, if you don't have enough of anything else, and you're just running the Raichus. So, super flexible if you can manage to get desserts on the Raichus with apples, ginger. And ginger being in some higher tier meals up here as well, being in some of the highest meals in the game. Ginger is just a very overall good ingredient. And it's very easy to build teams around the ingredients that your Berrymons are already producing if they have good ingredients. So, what does the Weavile offer there? Well, it's sausage, egg, soybean. Soybeans are good. They're in some of the top tier meals. Sausage is in one of the top tier meals, which I guess if you have a mono sausage one, that could be really good at supplementing for this meal specifically. Eggs have shockingly kind of fallen off. The only thing they're really relevant in is the flour gift macarons, which this is kind of an awkward meal because it's in a spot where you can't make it without good camp ticket or a pot size increaser, but if you're using a pot size increaser or a good camp ticket, you're probably going for the Zing Zap Spice Cola instead. So it's kind of in a weird spot. So overall, its ingredient list and is just... I do like that there's some synergy here with Ninja Curry, honestly. If you have a sausage, soybean one, that's kind of nice for that meal. But overall, I don't think the ingredients are just as gorgeous as that apple ginger. So I still think if you get the right combo of Raichus, it can be better for that flexibility on ingredients. Even though ingredients don't really matter when it comes to a berry specialist. And I do think that the Raichu does have a better island in Old Gold Power Plant. More meta-relevant things there to catch. Because like I said, the things that you catch at Snowdrop are good for Snowdrop. And the rest is eggs, which, like we discussed, eggs have kind of fallen off a little bit. So, yeah, it's really, really good. But I don't think it's worth the hunt for, based off these initial estimates. I think it's awesome what they're doing with it. I think putting this main skill, Tasty Chance S, on a berry specialist is definitely a good way to go. I think it's really good on berry and ingredient specialist, and even though Dedenne is really good at proccing the skill, I think it's difficult to justify running for just the skill. Because it loses its effect the more you run it. If you really want to maximize its value, you'd have to be swapping it around as you're proccing it throughout the day until you get like the right percentages, and it's just a mess to try and manage. I'd rather just throw a Pokemon on my team that happens to have it as an occasional side product, and then not think about it as much, and get more value out of each proc that way. So, yeah. That's all the details that we currently have about Sneasel and Weavile. I'm sure in about a day or two they'll have these last numbers worked out. But I decided to get this video up because A, I said I'd be making it. B, given that it's a berry specialist, these numbers really don't matter all that much. It's like... ingredients are kind of nice, but if this rate is really low, cool, that makes it better. It's finding more berries. If it's really, really high, people can just circumvent that by sneaky snacking with it. It'd be a shame because you'd be missing out on the skill then, but oh well. It's always circumventable in the case of berry specialists. Skill trigger rate. Once again, even if this is stupidly low, you get a lot of value from just one proc a week on the Weavile, on the Tasty Chance S skill. Like I said, really do watch that Brovini video. It's really interesting. So, yeah, I guess that's all my initial thoughts about the Weavile and its skill and its possible place in the meta. But my gosh, poor Houndoom. This poor guy, left in the dust. Literally a fully evolved Pokemon that is outpaced by an unevolved Pokemon without a ribbon. I think this is one of the first cases that we're seeing of an unevolved Pokemon without a ribbon doing better than the competing species. I know Vigoroth and Raticate are the same frequency with the same berry. This is the first time that we have where the berry is actually outproduced. So, yeah, this poor guy may his place in the meta as the Dark Berry Specialist forever be remembered. However, he is a more early game option for Dark Berry Specialist, because this guy's going to be hard to catch. Anyway, if you've learned something about the news, what's going on in the world of Pokemon Sleep, about Pokemon's place in the meta and the strategy around this game, then I please do ask that you leave a like and subscribe to the channel. as always, I do thank you guys for watching and hope that you have a wonderful day. Goodbye now.